Your mind is either your greatest weapon or your worst enemy. Right now, as you listen to this, thousands of thoughts are racing through your head. Worries about tomorrow, regrets from yesterday, that conversation you should have handled differently, the project that's stressing you out, the notification you just heard on your phone. This mental chaos isn't normal. It's not how your mind is supposed to work. Yet 99% of people accept this as reality. They live their entire lives with a mind that never stops, never rests, never finds peace. But what if I told you that the most successful, happiest, and most fulfilled people on earth have discovered something different? They've learned to cultivate what I call a quiet mind. Not an empty mind, but a focused, clear, intentional mind. A mind that thinks when it needs to think and rests when it needs to rest. A mind that operates from a place of calm confidence rather than anxious reactivity. This isn't meditation fluff or new age nonsense. This is neuroscience. This is psychology. This is the difference between living life on purpose versus being dragged around by every thought, emotion, and external distraction that crosses your path. By the time you finish this, you'll understand exactly how to transform your mental state from chaos to clarity, from anxiety to achievement, from scattered to strategic. The science is clear. People with quiet minds make better decisions, have stronger relationships, achieve more goals, and experience significantly higher levels of life satisfaction. They don't get overwhelmed by stress. They don't burn out. They don't waste mental energy on things they can't control. Instead, they direct their mental resources toward what matters most. And they do it with a calm, focused intensity that produces extraordinary results. But here's what most people get wrong about developing a quiet mind. They think it means suppressing thoughts or forcing themselves to be calm. That's like trying to stop a river by building a dam. It doesn't work and it creates more pressure. The real secret is learning to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them, to feel your emotions without being overwhelmed by them, and to respond to life from a place of choice rather than reaction. Chapter 1. The mental prison most people live in. Most people are trapped in what I call the mental noise prison, and they don't even realize they're locked up. They become so accustomed to the constant chatter, worry, and mental chaos that they think it's just part of being human. But it's not. It's learned behavior, and anything that's learned can be unlearned. Let me describe what mental noise looks like. You wake up and immediately your mind starts racing. What do I need to do today? Did I remember to send that email? Why did I say that stupid thing yesterday? What if this project doesn't work out? You reach for your phone and suddenly you're consuming information that has nothing to do with your goals or well-being. News that makes you anxious. Social media that makes you compare yourself to others. Notifications that fragment your attention before your day even begins. Throughout the day, your mind jumps from thought to thought like a monkey swinging from branch to branch. You're having a conversation with someone, but part of your mind is thinking about your next meeting. You're working on a project, but you keep getting distracted by emails, notifications, and random thoughts. You're spending time with people you care about, but you're not fully present because your mind is somewhere else. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's destroying your potential. When your mind is constantly scattered, you can't think deeply. When you can't think deeply, you can't solve complex problems. When you can't solve complex problems, you can't create breakthrough results in your life. You end up living reactively, responding to whatever demands the most attention in the moment, rather than proactively pursuing what matters most. The mental noise prison has three main components that keep people trapped. First is thought addiction. Your brain has become addicted to constant mental stimulation. Just like a drug addict needs their next fix, your mind craves the next thought, the next worry, the next piece of information. This creates a cycle where silence feels uncomfortable, boredom feels unbearable, and you constantly seek external stimulation to quiet the internal chaos. Second is emotional reactivity. When your mind is noisy, your emotions become amplified. Small setbacks feel like major crises. Minor disagreements feel like personal attacks. Everyday stress feels overwhelming. You're no longer responding to reality. You're responding to your interpretation of reality, which is distorted by mental noise. Third is attention deficit, not the clinical condition, but the modern epidemic of scattered attention. You've trained your brain to constantly switch between tasks, thoughts, and stimuli. This makes deep focus nearly impossible. You sit down to work on something important, and within minutes your mind is pulled in 10 different directions. You start reading a book, but you can't concentrate for more than a few pages. You try to have a meaningful conversation, but you keep checking your phone. Here's the devastating truth. Most people spend their entire lives in this mental prison without ever realizing there's a key to get out. They accept mental chaos as normal. They think anxiety is just part of modern life. They believe that a quiet mind is only for monks or people who have nothing important to worry about, but they're wrong. The most successful people in the world have learned to escape this prison. They've developed what researchers call cognitive control. They can direct their attention where they want it to go. They can think about what they choose to think about. They can remain calm under pressure because their minds aren't constantly generating stress and worry. This isn't a superpower, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed through proper training. Chapter 2, The Neuroscience of Mental Clarity and Why Your Brain Fights Against Peace. Your brain is not designed for the modern world. It's designed for survival in an environment that no longer exists. And this mismatch is the root cause of most mental suffering. Understanding this isn't just interesting. It's essential for developing a quiet mind because when you understand why your brain generates mental noise, you can start to work with it instead of against it. Let's start with the default mode network, one of the most important discoveries in neuroscience. When you're not actively focused on something, your brain doesn't rest. Instead, it switches to default mode, which is essentially a rumination network. It starts generating thoughts about the past, worries about the future, and scenarios that may never happen. This network burns about 20% of your total energy. Even when you think you're resting, the default mode network evolved as a survival mechanism. Our ancestors needed to constantly scan for threats, plan for challenges, and learn from past experiences. The person who was always thinking, always planning, always worried about what could go wrong was more likely to survive. But in the modern world, this constant mental activity is not only unnecessary, it's counterproductive. Here's what's happening in your brain when you experience mental noise. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, is constantly scanning for threats. But in today's world, most threats aren't physical. They're psychological. A difficult email triggers the same stress response as a charging lion. A social media post that makes you feel inadequate activates the same fear circuits as a predator. Your brain can't tell the difference between real danger and perceived danger, so it treats everything as a potential threat. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, higher-order thinking, and emotional regulation, becomes overwhelmed when you're constantly in threat detection mode. The prefrontal cortex can't do its job effectively. This is why you feel scattered, why you can't think clearly, why you make poor decisions when you're stressed. Your brain CEO is being shouted down by your brain security guard, but here's the fascinating part. Neuroscience has proven that you can literally rewire your brain. This concept is called neuroplasticity, and it means your brain is constantly changing based on how you use it. Every time you practice focusing your attention, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with concentration. Every time you choose calm over anxiety, you reinforce the circuits that support emotional regulation. Every time you observe your thoughts without getting caught up in them, you develop what scientists call metacognitive awareness. The research on meditation and mindfulness has shown remarkable results. People who practice these techniques for just 8 weeks show measurable changes in brain structure. The areas associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness become thicker and more active. The areas associated with stress, anxiety, and rumination become less reactive. Essentially, you're upgrading your brain's operating system. But here's what most people get wrong about developing a quiet mind. They think it's about stopping thoughts or suppressing emotions. That's like trying to stop waves in the ocean. Thoughts and emotions are natural. The problem isn't that you have them. The problem is that you're controlled by them. The goal isn't to eliminate thoughts, it's to change your relationship with them. Think of your mind like a snow globe. When it's shaken up, everything is chaotic and you can't see clearly. But when you stop shaking it, when you allow it to settle, everything becomes clear. You don't make the snow disappear, you just stop agitating it. That's what developing a quiet mind is really about. You're not trying to eliminate thoughts. You're learning to stop agitating your mental space. The neurological process of developing a quiet mind involves strengthening 3 key networks in your brain. First is the attention network, which allows you to focus on what you choose to focus on. Second is the awareness network, which allows you to observe your thoughts and emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Third is the regulation network, which allows you to respond to situations from a place of choice rather than reaction. When these networks work together, you experience what psychologists call flow state. Time seems to slow down or speed up. You're completely absorbed in what you're doing. Distractions fade away. You perform at your highest level. This isn't a mystical experience. It's an optimal brain state that can be cultivated through proper training. Chapter 3. The 5 pillars of positive psychology that transform your mental landscape. Positive psychology isn't about pretending everything is wonderful or forcing yourself to think positive thoughts. It's the scientific study of what makes life worth living. And it has identified specific practices and mindsets that lead to genuine well-being, resilience, and peak performance. When combined with a quiet mind, these principles become exponentially more powerful. The first pillar is gratitude, but not the superficial kind most people practice. True gratitude is a cognitive discipline that literally rewires your brain for positivity. When you regularly practice genuine gratitude, you train your attention to notice what's working in your life instead of constantly focusing on what's wrong. This isn't denial, it's balance. Your brain has a negativity bias that made sense for survival, but in the modern world, this bias creates unnecessary suffering. Neuroscientist Dr. Alex Korb found that gratitude activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine and serotonin. But more importantly, it strengthens neural pathways associated with optimism and resilience. People who practice daily gratitude experience lower levels of stress hormones, better sleep, stronger immune systems, and improved relationships. They don't ignore problems. They just don't get overwhelmed by them. The second pillar is meaning and purpose. People who have a clear sense of why they're alive and what they're working toward experience significantly higher levels of life satisfaction. Even when facing difficult circumstances, Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, observed that people who had a strong sense of meaning were more likely to survive extreme suffering. This principle applies to everyday life as well. When your mind is quiet, you can connect with your deeper values and purposes. The mental noise of daily life often drowns out the quiet voice of your authentic self. But when you develop mental clarity, you can hear what really matters to you. This creates what psychologists call intrinsic motivation, which is far more sustainable and fulfilling than external rewards. The third pillar is growth mindset, a concept developed by psychologist Carol Dweck. People with a growth mindset believe that abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort and learning. They see challenges as opportunities, failures as feedback, and obstacles as training. This isn't just optimistic thinking. It's a fundamental difference in how they process experiences. With a quiet mind, you can observe your thoughts about challenges without being overwhelmed by them. You can feel the discomfort of growth without running away from it. You can receive feedback without taking it personally. This allows you to learn and adapt faster than people who are constantly defending their ego or avoiding difficult situations. The fourth pillar is relationship and connection. Humans are fundamentally social beings, and the quality of our relationships is one of the strongest predictors of life satisfaction. But building deep, meaningful relationships requires presence, empathy, and emotional regulation, all of which are enhanced by a quiet mind. When your mind is constantly racing, you can't be fully present with other people. You're thinking about your next response instead of really listening. You're distracted by your own worries instead of attuning to their emotional state. A quiet mind allows you to be genuinely present, which is one of the greatest gifts you can give another person. The fifth pillar is resilience, which is your ability to bounce back from setbacks, adapt to change, and grow stronger through challenges. Resilience isn't about being tough or suppressing emotions. It's about developing a stable inner core that remains unshaken regardless of external circumstances. A quiet mind is the foundation of true resilience. When you're not overwhelmed by mental noise, you can think clearly during crisis. You can access your problem-solving abilities when you need them most. You can remain calm and centered, which allows you to make better decisions and inspire confidence in others. These 5 pillars work synergistically. Gratitude enhances your sense of meaning. A growth mindset strengthens your resilience. Strong relationships provide support for continued growth. And all of these elements together create what psychologists call eudaimonia, a Greek word that means flourishing or living well. But here's the key insight. These positive psychology principles are much easier to practice when your mind is quiet. It's hard to feel grateful when you're anxious. It's difficult to maintain a growth mindset when you're overwhelmed. It's challenging to build deep relationships when you're distracted. This is why developing a quiet mind isn't just about inner peace. It's about creating the optimal conditions for human flourishing. Chapter 4. The 4 mental traps that keep you trapped in noise and how to escape them. Even when people understand the importance of developing a quiet mind, most fail because they fall into predictable traps. These aren't character flaws, they're natural responses to our modern environment. But awareness of these traps is the first step to avoiding them. And understanding how to escape them is essential for genuine transformation. Trap number 1 is the stimulation addiction. Your brain has become addicted to constant mental stimulation, and like any addiction, withdrawal feels uncomfortable. When you first try to quiet your mind, you'll feel restless, bored, maybe even anxious. Your brain will generate thoughts like, "This is pointless. I have too much to do," or "Something important might be happening that I'm missing." This is not a sign that developing a quiet mind isn't for you. It's a sign that you need it desperately. The stimulation trap works like this. You've trained your brain to constantly seek the next hit of information, entertainment, or mental activity. Social media, news, podcasts, Netflix, work, emails, random thoughts about the future. All of these provide micro-doses of stimulation that temporarily quiet your mind, but ultimately make it more dependent on external sources of entertainment. Breaking free from stimulation addiction requires what I call graduated mental fasting. Just like you wouldn't run a marathon without training, you can't expect to sit in silence for an hour if you've been constantly stimulated. Start with just 5 minutes of intentional quiet time. No phone, no music, no distractions. Just sit and observe what happens in your mind. Notice the resistance. Notice how your brain generates thoughts to pull you back into stimulation. Don't fight these thoughts, just observe them. Gradually increase this time. 5 minutes becomes 10, 10 becomes 15. What you're doing is retraining your brain to be comfortable with its own company. You're teaching it that silence isn't threatening, it's restorative. This process takes time, usually several weeks, but the results are transformative. People who successfully break free from stimulation addiction report dramatically improved focus, creativity, and decision-making ability. Trap number 2 is the perfectionist paralysis. Many people believe they need perfect conditions to develop a quiet mind. They think they need a special meditation room, the right cushion, complete silence, or a specific amount of time. This perfectionist thinking becomes an excuse to never start. They're waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. The truth is you can develop a quiet mind anywhere, anytime, in any conditions. The goal isn't to eliminate all external distractions. It's to develop internal stability that remains unshaken regardless of circumstances. Some of the most profound moments of mental clarity happen in chaotic environments because that's when the skill is most needed and most developed. To escape perfectionist paralysis, embrace what I call imperfect practice. Practice developing a quiet mind while waiting in line during your commute before important meetings in the middle of stressful situations. The more you practice in imperfect conditions, the stronger your mental stability becomes. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Create them internally. Trap number 3 is the emotional resistance trap. When your mind starts to quiet down, suppressed emotions often surface. This is completely normal and actually healthy, but many people mistake this for evidence that they're doing something wrong. They think developing a quiet mind should immediately feel peaceful and pleasant. So when difficult emotions arise, they abandon the practice. Here's what's really happening. Mental noise often serves as a distraction from uncomfortable emotions. When you stop the constant mental chatter, you create space for feelings that have been pushed down or ignored. This is your emotional system cleaning itself out like your body detoxifying after you stop consuming junk. The key is to welcome these emotions without drowning in them. Feel them, acknowledge them, but don't let them control your actions. This emotional processing is temporary, and on the other side of it is genuine peace. People who push through this phase report significant emotional freedom and resilience. Trap number 4 is the instant gratification expectation. We live in a culture of instant everything, and many people expect developing a quiet mind to work the same way. They try it for a few days or weeks, and when they don't see dramatic results, they conclude it doesn't work for them. This is like going to the gym twice and expecting to be fit. Developing a quiet mind is like building muscle. The changes happen gradually, often so subtly that you don't notice them day to day. But over weeks and months, the cumulative effect is profound. Your stress levels decrease. Your focus improves, your relationships deepen, your decision-making becomes clearer, you become more present, more creative, more resilient. The secret to escaping the instant gratification trap is to focus on the process, not the outcome. Commit to the practice regardless of how you feel. Track your consistency, not your progress. Celebrate small wins, trust the process even when you can't see immediate results. The people who develop truly quiet minds are those who persist through the initial resistance and allow the gradual transformation to unfold. Understanding these traps doesn't just help you avoid them. It helps you recognize them when they arise and respond skillfully instead of reactively. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to strengthen your practice. Every challenge becomes proof that you're growing beyond your previous limitations. Chapter 5. The daily architecture of a quiet mind and how to build unshakable mental stability. Developing a quiet mind isn't something you do occasionally when you have time. It's something you build into the architecture of your daily life. Most people think about mental training the way they think about exercise, something you do for 30 minutes and then forget about. But your mind is active all day long, which means your mental training must be integrated into everything you do. The foundation of daily mental architecture is what I call anchor moments. These are specific times throughout your day when you intentionally return to the present moment and reconnect with mental clarity. The goal isn't to be in a meditative state all day. It's to have reliable points of stability that you can access whenever you need them. Your first anchor moment happens before you get out of bed. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone or jumping into mental planning, spend 2 to 3 minutes connecting with your breath and setting an intention for the day. This isn't about positive thinking or affirmations. It's about starting your day from a place of choice rather than reaction. You're telling your nervous system that you're in control, not your environment. Many people skip this step because they feel rushed or think they don't have time, but this is exactly backwards. The more rushed you feel, the more important this anchor becomes. 3 minutes of intentional calm at the beginning of your day can save you hours of scattered thinking and reactive behavior later. The second anchor moment happens during your morning routine. Whether you're showering, eating breakfast, or drinking coffee, choose one routine activity and do it with complete presence. Feel the water on your skin, taste your food. Notice the warmth of your coffee cup. This trains your brain to find meaning and peace in ordinary moments rather than constantly seeking stimulation from external sources. Throughout your workday, create micro-anchor moments. Before you check email, take 3 deep breaths. Before you enter a meeting, spend 30 seconds centering yourself. Before you make an important decision, pause and access your inner clarity. These moments are so brief that they don't interfere with productivity, but they accumulate throughout the day to create a foundation of mental stability. The evening anchor is particularly important because it determines the quality of your sleep and your mental state the next morning. Instead of scrolling through your phone or watching stimulating content before bed, spend 10 to 15 minutes in quiet reflection. Review your day without judgment. Acknowledge what went well. Notice what you learned and release any mental tension you're carrying, but anchor moments are just the foundation. The real architecture of a quiet mind involves how you handle the inevitable challenges and disruptions that occur throughout the day. This is where most people's practice falls apart. They can be calm in perfect conditions, but as soon as stress hits, they revert to old patterns of mental chaos. The secret is developing what I call response flexibility. Instead of automatically reacting to stressful situations with anxiety, frustration, or overwhelm, you create a small gap between the trigger and your response. In that gap, you access your quiet mind and choose how you want to respond. This gap might only last a few seconds at first, but it's enough to change everything. Instead of sending an angry email, you pause and consider your true objective. Instead of getting overwhelmed by a deadline, you access your problem-solving abilities. Instead of taking someone's behavior personally, you respond from a place of clarity and compassion. Building response flexibility requires practicing what I call the stop technique. When you notice stress, anxiety, or reactive emotions arising, mentally say, "Stop." Then take a conscious breath. Observe what's really happening without getting caught in the story your mind is creating, and proceed from a place of choice rather than reaction. Another crucial element of daily mental architecture is information diet. Just like junk food affects your physical health, junk information affects your mental health. Most people consume information randomly throughout the day, checking news, social media, emails, and entertainment without considering the cumulative effect on their mental state. A quiet mind requires being selective about what information you allow into your consciousness. This doesn't mean avoiding all news or living in a bubble. It means being intentional about when, how, and why you consume information. Check news and social media at specific times rather than constantly throughout the day. Choose sources that inform rather than inflame. Limit exposure to content that creates anxiety without providing actionable value. The final element of daily architecture is what I call integration practices. These are simple activities that help you process and integrate the experiences of your day rather than accumulating mental residue. This might be journaling, walking in nature, creative expression, or meaningful conversation. The key is having regular practices that help you digest your experiences and maintain mental clarity. People who successfully develop quiet minds don't rely on willpower or motivation. They create systems that make mental clarity the natural result of their daily habits. They engineer their environment, their routines, and their responses to support the mental state they want to cultivate. This isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Every anchor moment, every conscious breath, every intentional pause builds your capacity for mental stability and emotional freedom. Chapter 6. Advanced techniques for maintaining mental clarity under extreme pressure. Most people can achieve some level of mental calm when life is going well. But the real test of a quiet mind comes when everything is falling apart. When you're facing a major deadline, dealing with relationship conflict, experiencing financial stress, or navigating health challenges, that's when your mental training either serves you or abandons you. The difference between people who thrive under pressure and those who crumble isn't talent or luck. It's their ability to access mental clarity when they need it most. The first advanced technique is what I call pressure immunization. Just like vaccines expose you to small amounts of a virus to build immunity, pressure immunization involves deliberately practicing mental clarity techniques in progressively challenging situations. Most people only practice when they feel calm and have plenty of time, which means their skills evaporate the moment real stress hits. Start by practicing your anchor moments during minor irritations. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of getting frustrated, use it as an opportunity to practice response flexibility. When someone cuts in line, instead of getting angry, practice observing your emotional reaction without being controlled by it. When your computer crashes, instead of losing your mind, practice accessing calm in the middle of chaos. Gradually increase the intensity. Practice maintaining mental clarity during difficult conversations, high-stakes presentations, or emergency situations. The key is not to avoid stress but to use it as training for your mental stability. Champions don't become champions by avoiding challenges. They become champions by performing well under pressure. The second advanced technique is cognitive reframing under fire. When you're stressed, your brain naturally focuses on everything that could go wrong. This catastrophic thinking creates a downward spiral that makes bad situations worse. Advanced practitioners learn to reframe situations in real time, not by denying reality, but by choosing more empowering perspectives. Instead of "this is a disaster," try "this is a test of my resilience." Instead of "I can't handle this," try "this is developing my capacity to handle anything." Instead of "why is this happening to me," try "what is this teaching me?" This isn't positive thinking, it's strategic thinking. You're choosing thoughts that serve your ability to respond effectively rather than thoughts that paralyze you. The third technique is what neuroscientists call attentional control under load. When you're overwhelmed, your attention fragments. You start thinking about 10 things at once, none of them clearly. Advanced practitioners learn to narrow their focus to what's most important in the moment, while maintaining awareness of the bigger picture. This requires what I call tactical attention management. In any stressful situation, ask yourself 3 questions. What's the most important thing right now? What can I actually control in this moment? What would my wisest self do? These questions cut through mental noise and direct your attention to productive action rather than unproductive worry. The fourth advanced technique is emotional alchemy. Instead of trying to suppress difficult emotions during stressful times, you learn to transform their energy into fuel for peak performance. Anxiety can become excitement. Anger can become determination. Fear can become focus. Frustration can become motivation. This transformation happens through a process I call emotional surfing. Instead of fighting against difficult emotions or drowning in them, you learn to ride them like a surfer rides a wave. You feel the emotion fully. Acknowledge its message. Extract any useful information it contains, and then channel its energy toward constructive action. For example, when you feel anxiety about a deadline, instead of trying to calm down, use the energy of that anxiety to fuel intense focus and productivity. When you feel anger about an injustice, use that energy to take powerful action rather than just complaining. When you feel fear about a challenge, use that energy to prepare more thoroughly and perform more carefully. The fifth technique is systems thinking under pressure. When most people face complex challenges, they get overwhelmed by all the moving parts and variables. They try to solve everything at once or they freeze because the problem seems too big. Advanced practitioners break complex situations into manageable components and address them systematically. This involves what I call pressure compartmentalization. You mentally separate urgent from important, controllable from uncontrollable, and immediate from long-term. You handle each category differently. Urgent and important gets immediate attention. Important but not urgent gets scheduled. Urgent but not important gets delegated or eliminated. Neither urgent nor important gets ignored. The sixth advanced technique is energy management during crisis. Most people exhaust themselves during challenging periods by staying in constant high alert mode. They burn through their mental and emotional resources quickly, which makes them less effective when they need to be at their best. Advanced practitioners learn to pulse their energy, alternating between periods of intense focus and brief recovery. Even during the most demanding situations, they take micro breaks to restore their mental clarity. This might be 30 seconds of deep breathing between meetings, a 2-minute walk between tasks, or simply closing their eyes and centering themselves before important decisions. The seventh technique is what I call clarity anchoring. This involves having a specific mental routine that you can use to instantly access your quiet mind state regardless of external circumstances. It's like having a reset button for your consciousness that works anywhere, anytime. Your clarity anchor might be a specific breathing pattern, a meaningful phrase you repeat silently, a physical gesture that reminds you of your inner stability, or a visualization that connects you to your deepest sense of purpose. The key is practicing this anchor so consistently that it becomes an automatic response to stress rather than something you have to remember to do. People who master these advanced techniques don't just survive high-pressure situations, they thrive in them. They make their best decisions when stakes are highest. They stay creative when others panic. They inspire confidence when others lose hope. They turn obstacles into opportunities and setbacks into comebacks. Chapter 7, The Gratitude Revolution. And how to rewire your brain for unshakable optimism. Gratitude is the most powerful technique in positive psychology, but most people practice it wrong. They think gratitude means listing things they're thankful for or pretending everything is wonderful. Real gratitude is a sophisticated cognitive technology that literally rewires your brain's default settings from scarcity to abundance, from problems to possibilities, from what's missing to what's present. The neuroscience of gratitude is remarkable. When you practice genuine gratitude, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the same chemicals that antidepressants try to increase. But unlike medication, gratitude creates lasting changes in brain structure. Regular gratitude practice increases gray matter in areas associated with learning, memory, and emotional regulation while decreasing activity in the brain's stress centers. Dr. Robert Emmons, the world's leading gratitude researcher, found that people who practice daily gratitude experience 25% higher levels of happiness, 10% more optimism, better sleep quality, stronger immune systems, and more satisfying relationships. They also exercise more, eat better, and make healthier life choices. Gratitude isn't just a nice feeling. It's a performance enhancer for every area of life. But here's where most people go wrong. They practice surface gratitude, simply listing obvious things like health, family, or shelter. While these are genuinely worth appreciating, surface gratitude doesn't create the profound neurological changes that transform your mental landscape. You need to practice what I call deep gratitude, which involves finding genuine appreciation for things that initially seem neutral or even negative. Deep gratitude starts with appreciating the ordinary moments that you usually take for granted. The fact that you can see these words means your visual system is performing millions of complex calculations every second. The fact that you can understand language means your brain is accessing a sophisticated database of meaning and memory. The fact that you woke up this morning means billions of cellular processes worked perfectly while you slept. When you start noticing the miraculous nature of ordinary experiences, your baseline level of appreciation rises. You stop taking life for granted and start recognizing that even your most routine day contains countless gifts that most people throughout history could only dream of. Advanced gratitude practice involves finding appreciation for your challenges and difficulties. This isn't about pretending that problems are good or that suffering is pleasant. It's about recognizing that difficulties develop your character, build your resilience, and teach you lessons you couldn't learn any other way. Every obstacle you've overcome has made you stronger. Every failure has taught you something valuable. Every difficult person has shown you something about yourself. Every setback has redirected you towards something better. This doesn't mean you should seek out suffering, but it means you can extract value and meaning from whatever challenges life presents. The most powerful form of gratitude is what I call anticipatory gratitude. This involves feeling genuine appreciation for positive outcomes before they happen. Instead of waiting for good things to occur before feeling grateful, you cultivate gratitude for opportunities, possibilities, and potential futures. For example, instead of just being grateful after you achieve a goal, practice gratitude for the opportunity to pursue meaningful goals. Instead of just appreciating good health after you recover from illness, practice gratitude for your body's incredible capacity to heal itself instead of just feeling thankful for supportive relationships when others help you. Practice gratitude for the human capacity for love and connection. Anticipatory gratitude isn't wishful thinking or positive thinking. It's recognizing that life is constantly offering you opportunities for growth, learning, and contribution. When you appreciate these opportunities before they fully manifest, you become more likely to recognize them when they appear and more motivated to act on them effectively. Another advanced gratitude technique is appreciation mining. This involves deliberately looking for aspects of difficult situations that you can genuinely appreciate. When you're stuck in traffic, appreciate the opportunity to listen to educational content or practice patience. When you're dealing with difficult people, appreciate the opportunity to develop emotional regulation and social skills. When you're facing financial challenges, appreciate the motivation to become more resourceful and creative. This isn't about being thankful for problems. It's about being resourceful enough to find value in whatever circumstances you encounter. Champions don't just succeed when conditions are perfect. They find ways to benefit from imperfect conditions. They extract gold from whatever or all life provides. The daily architecture of gratitude involves specific practices that compound over time to create lasting changes in your mental landscape. Start each morning by identifying 3 specific things you appreciate about the coming day. These shouldn't be generic statements, but detailed observations about particular opportunities, experiences, or possibilities throughout the day. Practice memento moment gratitude by noticing small pleasures and conveniences you usually overlook. The taste of clean water, the warmth of sunlight, the efficiency of technology, the kindness of strangers, the beauty of nature, the comfort of shelter. These micro-appreciations train your brain to notice abundance rather than scarcity. End each day by reviewing what went well and extracting lessons from what didn't. Find something valuable in both your successes and your setbacks. Appreciate your growth, your learning, your relationships, and your progress toward meaningful goals. This evening, gratitude practice primes your subconscious mind to process experiences positively while you sleep. The ultimate goal of gratitude practice isn't to feel good all the time. It's to develop what researchers call an appreciative mindset. This means your default mental setting becomes noticing what's working, what's possible, and what's valuable rather than fixating on what's wrong, what's missing, or what's threatening. When combined with a quiet mind, gratitude becomes exponentially more powerful. Mental noise makes it hard to appreciate anything because you're too distracted by worry and rumination. But when your mind is clear and present, you can fully experience the depth and richness of life that gratitude reveals. You don't just think grateful thoughts, you embody a grateful way of being. Chapter 8. Flow states and peak performance through the union of quiet mind and positive psychology. Flow state is the ultimate expression of a quiet mind in action. It's the experience of being completely absorbed in an activity where time seems to disappear, self-consciousness fades, and you perform at your absolute best. Athletes call it being in the zone. Artists call it inspiration. Entrepreneurs call it being on fire. Scientists call it optimal experience. Whatever you call it, flow state represents the perfect marriage between mental clarity and peak performance. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi identified flow state through decades of research with high performers across every field imaginable. He found that flow experiences share common characteristics: complete concentration on the task at hand, clear goals and immediate feedback, balance between challenge and skill level, merger of action and awareness, loss of self-consciousness, transformation of time, and intrinsic motivation. But here's what most people don't understand about flow. It's not a random occurrence that happens to lucky people. Flow is a learnable skill that emerges from specific conditions you can deliberately create. When you combine a quiet mind with positive psychology principles, you create the optimal conditions for flow to arise consistently rather than occasionally. The first flow trigger is what researchers call the challenge-skill balance. Flow occurs when you're engaged in activities that are challenging enough to demand your full attention, but not so difficult that they create anxiety. Most people spend their lives in activities that are either too easy, which creates boredom, or too difficult, which creates stress. Flow exists in the sweet spot between these extremes. A quiet mind allows you to accurately assess both the challenge level of situations and your current skill level. Mental noise distorts perception, making easy things seem harder and hard things seem impossible. When your mind is clear, you can find the challenge-skill balance more easily and adjust your approach to maintain flow conditions. The second flow trigger is clear goals and immediate feedback. Your brain needs to know what it's trying to achieve and whether it's succeeding. Vague goals create confusion, which breaks flow. Delayed feedback creates uncertainty, which also disrupts the flow state. The most flow-inducing activities provide continuous information about your performance. Positive psychology enhances this trigger through what researchers call intrinsic goal setting. Instead of pursuing goals imposed by others or driven by external rewards, you focus on objectives that align with your deepest values and interests. When your goals are intrinsically meaningful, your brain releases more dopamine, which enhances focus and motivation. The third flow trigger is complete concentration on the present moment. Flow only occurs when you're fully absorbed in what you're happening right now rather than thinking about past or future. This is where quiet mind training becomes essential. Most people can't sustain focused attention for more than a few minutes before their mind wanders to other concerns. Advanced flow practitioners develop what I call selective attention mastery. They can choose what to focus on and maintain that focus despite distractions. This isn't about forcing concentration through willpower. It's about training attention like you would train any other skill. The more you practice directing your attention intentionally, the easier it becomes to enter and maintain flow states. The fourth flow trigger is the loss of self-consciousness. In flow, you stop monitoring how you look, what others think, or whether you're performing perfectly. The inner critic goes quiet and you become completely absorbed in the activity itself. This is one of the most liberating aspects of flow and why people become addicted to these experiences. A quiet mind naturally reduces self-consciousness because you're not constantly generating thoughts about yourself and your performance. When mental noise decreases, self-awareness paradoxically increases, but it becomes objective rather than judgmental. You notice what's happening without creating stories about what it means. The fifth flow trigger is intrinsic motivation. Flow occurs most easily when you're engaged in activities you find inherently rewarding rather than activities you're doing for external rewards. This is where positive psychology principles become crucial. When you understand your core values, strengths, and interests, you can design your life around activities that naturally generate flow. People who experience flow regularly don't just stumble into it. They engineer their environment and activities to maximize flow conditions. They seek out optimal challenges, create clear goals with immediate feedback, eliminate unnecessary distractions, and focus on intrinsically meaningful work. The relationship between flow and performance is profound. In flow state, your brain operates differently than normal. The prefrontal cortex, which usually creates self-doubt and overthinking, partially shuts down. Meanwhile, areas associated with pattern recognition, creativity, and skill execution become hyperactive. You literally think faster, see more clearly, and perform better than your normal state. But flow isn't just about peak performance in specific activities. It's about living with greater engagement and satisfaction. People who experience flow regularly report higher levels of life satisfaction, better relationships, improved health, and stronger sense of meaning and purpose. Flow is simultaneously a performance state and a well-being state. The practical application of flow principles involves redesigning your daily activities to include more flow opportunities. This might mean seeking more challenging projects at work, learning new skills that stretch your abilities, engaging in creative pursuits that absorb your attention, or participating in sports and physical activities that require complete focus. You can also create microflow experiences throughout your day. Any activity can become flow-inducing if you approach it with the right mindset. Washing dishes becomes meditative when you focus completely on the sensory experience. Walking becomes transcendent when you pay full attention to the rhythm and movement. Even routine work tasks can generate flow. When you set clear goals, seek immediate feedback and maintain complete concentration. The integration of quiet mind and positive psychology creates what I call sustained flow capacity. Instead of occasional peak experiences, you develop the ability to access flow-like states regularly. Your baseline level of engagement rises. You become more present, more focused, more creative, and more effective in everything you do. Chapter 9. Overcoming Setbacks and the Psychology of Mental Resilience. The path to developing a quiet mind isn't linear, and expecting it to be sets you up for unnecessary frustration and potential abandonment of the practice. Everyone who has developed genuine mental mastery has faced periods of doubt, regression, and apparent failure. The difference between those who succeed and those who give up isn't that successful people don't experience setbacks. It's that they understand setbacks are part of the process and know how to navigate them skillfully. The first type of setback is what I call the honeymoon crash. When people first start practicing quiet mind techniques, they often experience rapid initial improvement. Their stress decreases, their focus improves, their relationships get better. This early success creates optimism and motivation. But then, usually after a few weeks or months, they hit a plateau or even seem to regress. This crash isn't a sign that the practice isn't working. It's actually evidence that it is working. Your brain is rewiring itself, which means old patterns are being disrupted before new patterns are fully established. It's like renovating a house. Things get messier before they get better. During this phase, you might feel more anxious, more scattered, or more emotionally reactive than before you started practicing. The key to navigating the honeymoon crash is understanding that it's temporary and necessary. Your nervous system is releasing stored stress and trauma. Suppressed emotions are surfacing to be processed and integrated. Your brain is forming new neural pathways while old ones are weakening. This process can feel uncomfortable, but it's a sign of healing and growth. The second type of setback is triggered regression. Major life stresses like job loss, relationship problems, health challenges, or family crisis can temporarily override your mental training. During these periods, you might find yourself reverting to old patterns of anxiety, overwhelm, or reactive behavior despite months or years of practice. This doesn't mean you've lost your progress or that your training was worthless. It means you're human, and even well-trained minds can be temporarily overwhelmed by extreme circumstances. The difference is that your recovery time is much faster than it would have been without training, where you might have been stuck in reactive patterns for weeks or months before. You now recover your equilibrium in days or hours. The third type of setback is motivational fatigue. After practicing for an extended period, some people lose enthusiasm for their mental training. The practices that once felt meaningful start feeling routine or boring. The benefits that once seemed remarkable start feeling normal. This is similar to what happens in long-term relationships or careers. Familiarity can breed complacency. Motivational fatigue is often a sign that you need to evolve your practice rather than abandon it. This might mean exploring new techniques, setting more challenging goals, or finding ways to deepen your understanding. Advanced practitioners regularly refresh their practice to maintain engagement and continue growing. The fourth type of setback is social resistance. As you develop greater mental clarity and emotional stability, you might find that some people in your life react negatively to your changes. They might criticize your practices, question your new boundaries, or pressure you to return to old patterns. This social resistance can create doubt and make you wonder if you're on the right path. Understanding that social resistance is normal and often inevitable helps you navigate it without abandoning your growth. When you change, it affects the dynamics of all your relationships. Some people will support your evolution. Others will feel threatened by it. Your job isn't to convince everyone else to change. It's to continue your own development while maintaining compassion for those who aren't ready for their own growth. The psychology of resilience involves developing what researchers call anti-fragility. This concept, developed by Nassim Taleb, describes systems that don't just survive stress but actually grow stronger because of it. Anti-fragile people don't just bounce back from setbacks. They use setbacks as fuel for greater strength, wisdom, and capability. Building anti-fragility requires reframing your relationship with difficulty. Instead of seeing setbacks as evidence that you're failing, you learn to see them as information about where you need to grow. Instead of trying to avoid all challenges, you develop confidence in your ability to handle whatever life presents. Instead of seeing struggle as abnormal, you recognize it as the price of growth and transformation. The practical approach to setback navigation involves what I call the RISE protocol. First, recognize what's happening without judgment or self-criticism. Setbacks are normal and temporary. Second, investigate the underlying causes without getting lost in analysis. What triggered this setback? What can you learn from it? Third, strategize your response based on your investigation. What adjustments do you need to make? What support do you need? Fourth, execute your strategy with patience and self-compassion. Another crucial element of resilience is maintaining perspective during difficult periods. Setbacks feel permanent when you're in the middle of them, but they're actually temporary disruptions in a longer trajectory of growth. Keeping a practice journal helps you see patterns and progress that aren't obvious day to day. When you can look back and see how far you've come, temporary setbacks become less threatening. The role of community and support in resilience cannot be overstated. People who successfully navigate setbacks usually have some form of support system, whether that's friends, family, mentors, coaches, or groups of like-minded individuals. Isolation makes setbacks feel more overwhelming and permanent than they actually are. Self-compassion is perhaps the most important element of resilience. Most people respond to setbacks with self-criticism, which only makes the situation worse. They tell themselves they're weak, they're failing, they're not cut out for this kind of growth. This internal criticism creates additional stress and makes recovery more difficult. Advanced practitioners learn to treat themselves with the same kindness they would offer a good friend facing similar challenges. They acknowledge their suffering without dramatizing it. They recognize their common humanity rather than feeling uniquely flawed. They speak to themselves with encouragement rather than criticism. The ultimate goal isn't to avoid all setbacks, but to develop the skills and mindset that allow you to navigate them gracefully and extract maximum learning from each experience. Every setback becomes an opportunity to deepen your practice, strengthen your resilience, and prove to yourself that you can handle whatever life presents. Chapter 10. Building long-term mental mastery and creating a legacy of inner peace. Developing a quiet mind isn't a destination you reach and then maintain effortlessly. It's a lifelong journey of continuous growth, deepening awareness, and expanding capacity. The people who achieve true mental mastery understand that this is a practice they'll engage with for the rest of their lives, not a problem they solve once and forget about. The transition from beginner to advanced practitioner involves several key shifts in perspective. Initially, most people practice quiet mind techniques to solve specific problems. They want less anxiety, better focus, improved relationships, or greater success. These are valid motivations, but they represent what I call problem-focused practice. Advanced practitioners transition to growth-focused practice. They're not just trying to fix what's wrong. They're committed to developing their full human potential. They practice not because they have to, but because they want to see how far they can evolve. They're curious about the depths of peace, clarity, and wisdom they can access. This shift from problem-focused to growth-focused practice changes everything. Instead of practicing only when you feel stressed or overwhelmed, you practice consistently because you're committed to continuous growth. Instead of using techniques as temporary fixes, you develop them as permanent capacities. Instead of seeing mental training as separate from life, you integrate it into everything you do. The second major transition is from self-focused to others-focused practice. Initially, quiet mind development is naturally centered on your own experience. You're learning to manage your thoughts, regulate your emotions, and improve your performance. But as you mature in practice, your motivation expands to include serving others. You realize that your mental clarity isn't just for your benefit, it's for everyone who interacts with you. When you're centered and peaceful, you create a calming influence on others. When you're clear and focused, you make better decisions that benefit your family, your work, and your community. When you're emotionally regulated, you can be more present and supportive for the people in your life. This shift towards service creates what researchers call eudaimonic motivation, the drive to contribute to something greater than yourself. This type of motivation is more sustainable and fulfilling than hedonic motivation, which focuses only on personal pleasure and comfort. The third transition is from technique-focused to principle-focused practice. Beginners need specific techniques and structured practices to develop basic skills. They need meditation instructions, breathing exercises, gratitude protocols, and step-by-step systems. This is appropriate and necessary for building foundational capacities. Advanced practitioners internalize the principles behind the techniques and apply them fluidly in real-time situations. They don't need to sit in formal meditation to access inner stillness. They don't need structured gratitude practices to appreciate life deeply. They don't need specific breathing exercises to remain calm under pressure. The principles become integrated into their way of being. This doesn't mean abandoning formal practices entirely. Even advanced practitioners usually maintain some structured practices for continued growth and maintenance, but they're not dependent on external conditions or specific techniques to access their inner resources. The development of mental mastery follows what researchers call the competence hierarchy. First, you're unconsciously incompetent. You don't even know you lack mental clarity skills. Then you become consciously incompetent. You realize you need to develop these capacities. Next, you become consciously competent. You can access quiet mind states when you remember to apply the techniques. Finally, you reach unconscious competence. Mental clarity becomes your natural default state. You don't have to remember to be present, centered, and clear. You don't have to work to stay calm under pressure or focus during challenging tasks. These capacities become automatic responses that arise naturally from your developed character. Building long-term mastery requires what I call practice evolution. Your mental training must continuously evolve to match your growing capacities and changing life circumstances. What works for a beginner may not be challenging enough for someone with years of experience. What's appropriate for someone in their 20s may not be relevant for someone in their 60s. Advanced practice often involves seeking greater challenges and more subtle levels of development. This might mean practicing in more difficult conditions, working with more challenging emotions, or developing more refined capacities like intuitive decisioning or empathic attunement. The concept of legacy becomes important in advanced practice. What kind of mental and emotional environment are you creating for the people around you? What are you modeling for your children, your colleagues, your friends? How are you contributing to the collective mental health of your community? People with developed quiet minds often become what I call peaceful leaders. They don't necessarily hold formal leadership positions, but they influence others through their presence, wisdom, and example. They demonstrate that it's possible to remain calm in chaos, kind in conflict, and clear in confusion. The ripple effects of one person's mental mastery extend far beyond their individual life. A parent who has developed emotional regulation raises children who are more secure and resilient. A manager who has cultivated mental clarity makes decisions that benefit everyone they oversee. A teacher who embodies inner peace creates learning environments where students can flourish. Creating a personal practice architecture for long-term development involves several components. First is your core practices, the foundational techniques you maintain regardless of external circumstances. These might include daily meditation, regular reflection, or consistent gratitude practice. Second is your challenge practices, techniques you use to continue growing and stretching your capacities. These might involve practicing in difficult conditions, working with advanced teachers, or exploring new dimensions of consciousness. Third is your integration practices, ways you apply your mental training to real-world situations and relationships. This might include bringing mindfulness to work projects, applying emotional regulation skills in family dynamics, or using quiet mind principles in creative endeavors. Fourth is your service practices, ways you share your development with others and contribute to collective well-being. This might involve mentoring others, supporting community initiatives, or simply being a consistent source of peace and stability in your circles. The ultimate goal of long-term mental mastery isn't personal perfection, but authentic contribution. You develop a quiet mind not to escape the world, but to engage with it more skillfully. You cultivate inner peace not to avoid conflict, but to navigate it more wisely. You build mental clarity not to judge others, but to serve them more effectively. When quiet mind development is pursued with this broader perspective, it becomes one of the most meaningful and fulfilling paths a person can follow. You're not just improving your own life. You're contributing to the evolution of human consciousness and the creation of a more peaceful, wise, and compassionate world. Chapter 11. The Science of Emotional Mastery and How to Transform Any Feeling into Fuel. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. They feel anxious, so they avoid challenges. They feel angry, so they lash out at others. They feel sad, so they withdraw from life. They feel excited, so they make impulsive decisions. This emotional reactivity isn't a character flaw. It's a lack of training. Just like you can train your body to be stronger and more resilient, you can train your emotional system to be more intelligent and responsive. Emotional mastery isn't about suppressing feelings or pretending you don't have emotions. It's about developing a sophisticated relationship with your emotional life where you can feel everything fully while being controlled by nothing. This is one of the most powerful applications of a quiet mind because when your thoughts are clear, you can observe your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. The first principle of emotional mastery is understanding that emotions are information, not commands. Every emotion you experience is your nervous system's way of communicating important data about your environment, your needs, your values, and your goals. Anger tells you that a boundary has been crossed. Fear alerts you to potential threats. Sadness signals that something you value has been lost. Joy indicates that your needs are being met. Most people miss this crucial information because they're too busy reacting to the emotion or trying to make it go away. They treat emotions like problems to solve rather than messages to decode. When you develop a quiet mind, you create the mental space necessary to receive these messages clearly and respond to them wisely. The second principle is emotional granularity, which is your ability to distinguish between different emotional states with precision. Most people have a limited emotional vocabulary. They use words like good or bad, happy or sad, stressed or fine. This emotional vagueness makes it impossible to respond appropriately to what you're actually feeling. Advanced emotional mastery involves developing what researchers call high emotional granularity. Instead of just feeling bad, you can distinguish between frustrated, disappointed, anxious, overwhelmed, sad, angry, or confused. Each of these emotions requires a different response and provides different information. When you can name emotions precisely, you can address them specifically. The third principle is the emotion-action gap. Between feeling an emotion and taking action, there's a small space where choice exists. Most people collapse this gap, moving directly from feeling to action without conscious intervention. They feel angry and immediately send a nasty text. They feel anxious and immediately start avoiding the situation. They feel excited and immediately make impulsive commitments. Emotional mastery involves expanding this gap so you have time to choose your response. This doesn't mean suppressing the emotion or pretending you don't feel it. It means feeling the emotion fully while maintaining enough awareness to choose how you want to respond. This is where the quiet mind becomes essential because mental noise makes it impossible to access this space of choice. The fourth principle is emotional alchemy, the ability to transform emotional energy into constructive action. Every emotion contains energy that can be channeled toward positive outcomes. Anger can become determination to create change. Fear can become careful preparation and heightened attention. Sadness can become compassion and deeper appreciation for what matters. Frustration can become motivation to find better solutions. This transformation doesn't happen automatically. It requires what I call conscious emotional processing. When you feel a strong emotion, instead of immediately reacting or trying to suppress it, you pause and ask yourself several questions. What is this emotion trying to tell me? What information does it contain? What action would honor this emotion while serving my highest good? How can I channel this energy constructively? The fifth principle is emotional regulation under pressure. It's relatively easy to maintain emotional balance when life is going well, but real mastery is demonstrated when you're facing difficult circumstances. This requires developing what neuroscientists call cognitive control, the ability to override automatic emotional responses and choose more skillful reactions. Advanced practitioners train their emotional regulation skills progressively, starting with small irritations and building up to major challenges. They practice maintaining their center during traffic jams, difficult conversations, unexpected setbacks, and high-pressure situations. This training builds what I call emotional fitness, the capacity to remain clear and responsive even when emotions are running high. The sixth principle is emotional contagion awareness. Emotions are highly contagious. When you're around anxious people, you tend to become anxious. When you're with excited people, you tend to become excited. When you're near angry people, you tend to become defensive or aggressive. Most people are unconscious of this emotional contagion and get swept along by whatever emotional currents surround them. Emotional mastery involves developing what I call emotional sovereignty, the ability to maintain your own emotional state regardless of what others are feeling. This doesn't mean being cold or disconnected. It means being able to empathize with others' emotions without being controlled by them. You can be present with someone's pain without drowning in it. You can witness someone's anger without becoming reactive yourself. The seventh principle is emotional integration, which involves learning from your emotional experiences rather than just enduring them. Every strong emotion you experience contains lessons about your values, your needs, your boundaries, and your growth edges. When you approach emotions with curiosity rather than resistance, they become teachers rather than obstacles. This requires developing what I call emotional intelligence in action. After experiencing strong emotions, you reflect on what triggered them, what they revealed about you, and how you can respond more skillfully in the future. You treat your emotional life as a laboratory for developing wisdom and compassion rather than just something to survive. The practical application of emotional mastery involves daily practices that strengthen your emotional intelligence and regulation skills. This includes regular emotional check-ins where you notice and name what you're feeling. It involves practicing the pause between feeling and action. It includes working with challenging emotions through conscious processing rather than avoidance or reactivity. When you develop true emotional mastery, you become what I call an emotional alchemist. You can transform any feeling into fuel for positive action. You can remain centered in chaos, compassionate in conflict, and clear in confusion. Your emotions become allies in your growth rather than obstacles to your success. Chapter 12. The Art of Conscious Relationships and How Inner Peace Transforms Every Connection. Your relationships are the ultimate test of your inner development. You can meditate for hours, practice gratitude religiously, and maintain perfect composure when you're alone. But the moment you interact with other people, especially those closest to you, your real level of consciousness is revealed. This is why conscious relationship skills are essential for anyone serious about developing a quiet mind and living from positive psychology principles. Most relationship problems aren't actually relationship problems. They're consciousness problems. When two unconscious people interact, they trigger each other's unresolved issues, defensive patterns, and reactive behaviors. They project their internal chaos onto each other and wonder why their connections are difficult and draining. But when even one person in a relationship develops genuine inner stability, the entire dynamic can transform. The foundation of conscious relationships is what I call presence-based connection. Instead of trying to get something from others, impress them, fix them, or control them, you focus on being fully present with them. This quality of presence is rare in our distracted world. And when people encounter it, they feel seen, heard, and valued in a way that transforms the entire interaction. Presence-based connection requires several key elements. First is attention management. When you're with someone, you give them your complete attention. You're not thinking about your next response, checking your phone, or planning what you'll do later. You're completely absorbed in the experience of being with them. This kind of attention is so rare that it feels like a gift to whoever receives it. Second is emotional attunement. You tune into the other person's emotional state and match your energy to what the situation requires. If they're excited, you share in their enthusiasm. If they're grieving, you create space for their sadness. If they're anxious, you offer calm stability. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally reactive yourself. It means being emotionally responsive in ways that serve connection and understanding. Third is curiosity over judgment. Instead of immediately evaluating what people say or do, you approach them with genuine curiosity about their experience, their perspective, and their inner world. You ask questions designed to understand rather than questions designed to prove your point. You listen to learn rather than listening to respond. The second pillar of conscious relationships is conscious communication. Most people communicate unconsciously, saying whatever comes to mind without considering the impact of their words. They dump their emotions on others, criticize without offering solutions, or speak in ways that create defensiveness and disconnection. Conscious communication involves several advanced skills. First is speaking from choice rather than reaction. Before you speak, especially about sensitive topics, you pause and consider what you're trying to achieve. Are you speaking to express yourself, to understand the other person, to solve a problem, or to create connection? This clarity of intention shapes how you communicate. Second is using language that creates safety rather than threat. You speak about your own experience rather than making statements about the other person's character. Instead of saying you never listen to me, you say I feel unheard when we have these conversations. Instead of you're being defensive, you say I notice some tension between us and I'd like to understand what's happening. Third is timing and emotional intelligence. You recognize when someone is too activated to have a productive conversation and wait for a better moment. You pay attention to nonverbal cues and adjust your approach accordingly. You understand that what you say is less important than how the other person receives it, so you communicate in ways they can actually hear. The third pillar of conscious relationships is boundary intelligence. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that help relationships flourish. They define what you will and won't accept, what you need to feel safe and respected, and how you want to be treated. Clear boundaries actually create more intimacy, not less, because they allow people to relax and be themselves. Most people struggle with boundaries because they confuse boundaries with barriers. A barrier is rigid and defensive. I won't discuss this topic ever. A boundary is flexible and protective. I'm not available to discuss this topic when either of us is upset, but I'm happy to talk about it when we can both approach it calmly. Setting conscious boundaries requires several skills. First is clarity about your own needs, values, and limits. You can't set appropriate boundaries if you don't know what you need. Second is the ability to communicate these boundaries clearly and kindly without over-explaining or apologizing for having them. Third is the willingness to maintain your boundaries even when others don't like them. The fourth pillar is conflict transformation. Most people either avoid conflict entirely or engage in it destructively. Conscious relationship practitioners see conflict as information about mismatched needs, different values, or communication breakdowns. They approach conflict with curiosity rather than defensiveness, seeking to understand rather than to win. Conflict transformation involves several advanced skills. First is the ability to stay centered when others are activated. You don't take their emotional reactivity personally, and you don't get pulled into reactive patterns yourself. Second is the skill of finding the underlying needs beneath people's positions. When someone is angry about something specific, you look for the deeper need that isn't being met. Third is creative problem solving that honors everyone's core needs. Instead of compromising where everyone loses something, you seek solutions where everyone's most important needs are met. This requires thinking beyond obvious solutions and being willing to try new approaches. The fifth pillar is conscious appreciation and gratitude in relationships. Most people take their relationships for granted and focus primarily on what's not working. Conscious practitioners regularly acknowledge what they appreciate about others and express genuine gratitude for the value others bring to their lives. This isn't about false positivity or ignoring problems. It's about maintaining a balanced perspective that recognizes both the challenges and the gifts in every relationship. When people feel genuinely appreciated, they're more willing to work through difficulties and more motivated to bring their best selves to the connection. The transformation that occurs when you bring these principles to your relationships is remarkable. People feel safer around you because you're not trying to control or fix them. Conversations become deeper because you create space for authentic sharing. Conflicts become opportunities for greater understanding rather than battles to be won. Your presence becomes a gift that others seek out rather than something they tolerate. Most importantly, your relationships become laboratories for your own growth. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice presence, compassion, and consciousness. The challenges you face with others become mirrors that show you areas where you need to develop greater wisdom and emotional maturity. Chapter 13. Advanced Mental Training Protocols for Peak Performance in Any Field. The difference between good performers and great performers isn't talent, intelligence, or even hard work. It's the quality of their mental training. Elite athletes, successful entrepreneurs, innovative artists, and exceptional leaders all share one common characteristic. They've developed advanced mental training protocols that optimize their psychological state for peak performance. These protocols go far beyond basic meditation or positive thinking. They involve sophisticated techniques for managing attention, regulating emotions, accessing flow states, and maintaining optimal mental conditions regardless of external pressures. When combined with the principles of quiet mind and positive psychology, these protocols become exponentially more powerful. The first advanced protocol is what I call state management mastery. Your mental state determines the quality of your performance more than any other factor. When you're in an optimal state, you think clearly, make better decisions, access your creativity, and perform at your highest level. When you're in a suboptimal state, even your best efforts produce mediocre results. Most people leave their mental state to chance. They hope they'll feel motivated when it's time to perform, but they have no reliable way to create the state they need. Advanced performers develop specific protocols for accessing optimal states on demand, regardless of how they're feeling or what's happening around them. State management begins with state awareness. You learn to recognize the subtle differences between various mental and emotional states. You notice how you feel when you're in flow versus when you're struggling. You recognize the early warning signs of stress, fatigue, or overwhelm before they derail your performance. This awareness allows you to make adjustments before problems become serious. The second component is state anchoring. You develop specific rituals, breathing patterns, visualization techniques, or physical movements that reliably produce optimal states. These anchors work because they create neurological associations between specific actions and desired mental states. The more you practice these associations, the more reliable they become. For example, a tennis player might develop a specific breathing pattern combined with a visualization of successful shots that she uses before every serve. A surgeon might have a particular way of centering himself before entering the operating room. A speaker might use certain phrases or physical movements to access confidence before taking the stage. The third component is state maintenance. Once you access an optimal state, you need strategies for maintaining it throughout your performance. This involves managing your attention, regulating your emotions, and staying connected to your deeper purpose even when facing challenges or setbacks. The second advanced protocol is attention architecture. Your ability to direct and sustain attention is the foundation of all peak performance. In our distracted world, the capacity for sustained, focused attention has become a competitive advantage in every field. Advanced attention training involves several dimensions. First is attention span. Your ability to maintain focus on a single task for extended periods. Most people can only sustain focused attention for 10 to 20 minutes before their mind wanders. Elite performers can maintain focus for hours when necessary. Second is attention flexibility. Your ability to shift focus smoothly between different tasks or levels of awareness. This might involve zooming in on specific details when precision is required, then zooming out to see the bigger picture when strategic thinking is needed. Third is attention selectivity. Your ability to filter out irrelevant information and distractions while maintaining focus on what matters most. In high-pressure situations, there's often a lot of competing information demanding your attention. Elite performers can maintain focus on their priorities despite external chaos. The third protocol is pressure optimization. Most people see pressure as something to avoid or endure, but elite performers learn to use pressure as fuel for enhanced performance. They understand that optimal performance often requires a certain amount of stress and challenge to activate their full capabilities. Pressure optimization involves finding your optimal arousal level for different types of tasks. Some activities require calm, relaxed focus, while others require high energy and intensity. Learning to calibrate your arousal level to match the demands of the situation is a key skill for consistent peak performance. This also involves reframing your relationship with pressure. Instead of seeing high-stakes situations as threats, you learn to see them as opportunities to demonstrate your capabilities. Instead of trying to eliminate nervousness, you learn to channel that energy into heightened focus and performance. The fourth protocol is recovery and regeneration. Peak performance isn't just about what you do during performance. It's about how you recover between performances. Elite performers understand that recovery is as important as training, and they're as systematic about their rest as they are about their work. Advanced recovery protocols involve multiple dimensions. Physical recovery includes proper sleep, nutrition, exercise, and stress management. Mental recovery involves practices that restore your cognitive resources and emotional balance. This might include meditation, spending time in nature, engaging in creative activities, or simply allowing your mind to rest. The key is understanding that different types of performance demand different types of recovery. If you've been doing intense analytical work, you might need creative right brain activities to restore balance. If you've been dealing with high social demands, you might need solitude to recharge your energy. The fifth protocol is continuous calibration. Elite performers constantly monitor and adjust their training based on their current needs and performance levels. They track their energy, mood, focus, and performance to identify patterns and optimize their approach. This involves developing sophisticated self-awareness about what conditions support your best performance and what factors tend to undermine it. You might notice that you perform better at certain times of day, after certain types of preparation, or in certain environments. This information allows you to optimize your conditions for peak performance. The sixth protocol is mental rehearsal and visualization. Your brain can't distinguish between vivid mental experiences and actual experiences, which means you can improve your performance through systematic mental practice. Elite performers use sophisticated visualization techniques to prepare for challenges. Rehearse optimal performances and build confidence. Effective mental rehearsal involves all your senses and emotions, not just visual imagery. You imagine how optimal performance feels in your body, what you'll see and hear, and the emotions you'll experience. The more vivid and detailed your mental rehearsal, the more it prepares your nervous system for actual performance. The seventh protocol is purpose-driven performance. The most sustainable peak performance comes from connecting your efforts to something larger than yourself. When you're driven by purpose rather than just personal achievement, you have access to deeper sources of motivation and resilience. This involves regularly reconnecting with your deeper values and the meaning behind your performance. Why does this matter to you? Who benefits from your best efforts? How does your performance contribute to something you care about beyond yourself? These questions help you access intrinsic motivation that sustains peak performance over time. When you integrate all these protocols into a systematic approach to mental training, your capacity for peak performance becomes remarkably consistent. You're no longer dependent on feeling motivated or having perfect conditions. You have reliable methods for accessing your best self regardless of circumstances. Chapter 14. The Neuroscience of Lasting Change and How to Make Transformation Permanent. Understanding how your brain changes is crucial for making lasting transformation rather than temporary improvement. Most people experience cycles of progress and regression because they don't understand the neurological principles that govern permanent change. They rely on willpower and motivation, which are finite resources rather than leveraging the brain's natural capacity for rewiring itself. The first principle of lasting change is neuroplasticity. Your brain's ability to form new neural pathways and reorganize itself throughout your life. Every time you think a thought, feel an emotion, or take an action, you're literally rewiring your brain. The pathways you use most often become stronger and more automatic, while unused pathways weaken and eventually disappear. This means that every moment is an opportunity to either reinforce old patterns or create new ones. When you practice quiet mind techniques, you're strengthening neural pathways associated with calm, focus, and emotional regulation. When you practice gratitude, you're building stronger connections in areas of your brain associated with positive emotions and well-being. But here's the crucial insight. It takes approximately 66 days of consistent practice for a new behavior to become automatic, and it takes much longer for complex psychological changes to become permanent. Most people give up during the difficult middle phase when they're no longer seeing rapid progress, but haven't yet reached the point where the new behavior becomes effortless. The second principle is the importance of gradual progressive change rather than dramatic sudden shifts. Your brain resists rapid change because it perceives it as potentially dangerous when you try to transform yourself overnight. Your nervous system activates resistance mechanisms designed to maintain homeostasis. Successful transformation involves what I call titrated change, making small adjustments that gradually shift your set points without triggering resistance. This might mean starting with just 5 minutes of daily practice rather than trying to meditate for an hour. It might mean practicing gratitude for one thing each day rather than trying to completely change your mindset immediately. The key is consistency over intensity. Small daily actions compound over time to create profound transformation, while sporadic intense efforts usually lead to burnout and regression. Your brain adapts to whatever you do most consistently. So regular small practices are more powerful than occasional dramatic efforts. The third principle is the role of environmental design in supporting lasting change. Your environment constantly influences your behavior through subtle cues and triggers. If you're trying to develop a quiet mind, but your environment is constantly stimulating and chaotic, you're working against yourself. Environmental design involves creating conditions that make positive behaviors easier and negative behaviors harder. This might mean designing your morning routine to support mental clarity practices, organizing your physical space to reduce stress and distractions, or surrounding yourself with people who support your growth rather than undermine it. Your brain is constantly scanning for cues about what behavior to engage in, and most of these processes happen below the level of conscious awareness. By designing your environment thoughtfully, you can influence these subconscious processes to support rather than sabotage your transformation. The fourth principle is the importance of identity-based change rather than behavior-based change. Most people try to change their behavior directly, but lasting change happens when you change your identity and then align your behavior with that new identity. Instead of saying I'm trying to meditate more, you say I'm someone who practices mental clarity daily. Instead of I'm working on being more positive, you say I'm someone who naturally looks for the good in every situation. This identity shift creates internal consistency pressure that makes the associated behaviors feel natural rather than forced. Identity change happens through what psychologist Dr. Benjamin Hardy calls being, doing, having cycles. You start by being the type of person you want to become in small ways, then doing the things that person would do, which leads to having the results that person would have over time. This cycle reinforces the new identity until it becomes your natural way of being. The fifth principle is the role of social reinforcement in maintaining change. Humans are fundamentally social creatures, and our behavior is strongly influenced by social expectations and feedback. If the people around you don't support or understand your transformation, it becomes much harder to maintain new patterns. This is why finding communities of like-minded people is crucial for lasting change. When you're surrounded by others who value mental clarity, emotional intelligence, and positive psychology, these behaviors become socially reinforced rather than socially undermined. Sometimes this means changing your social environment, but often it means finding additional communities rather than abandoning existing relationships. You might join a meditation group, find online communities of people pursuing similar growth, or work with mentors and coaches who support your development. The sixth principle is the integration of change across multiple life domains. Lasting transformation doesn't happen in isolation. If you develop mental clarity in your personal practice but continue to engage in chaotic unconscious patterns at work, the transformation will be incomplete and unstable. True integration involves applying the principles of quiet mind and positive psychology across all areas of your life. Your relationships, your work, your health habits, your creative pursuits, and your contribution to others. This creates what I call systemic reinforcement, where every aspect of your life supports and strengthens every other aspect. The seventh principle is the importance of tracking progress and maintaining perspective during the change process. Transformation rarely happens in a linear fashion. You'll have periods of rapid progress followed by plateaus or even apparent regression. Without proper tracking and perspective, these natural fluctuations can derail your commitment to change. Effective tracking involves multiple metrics beyond just whether you completed your daily practices. You track your stress levels, the quality of your relationships, your ability to handle challenges, your overall life satisfaction, and other indicators of well-being. This gives you a more complete picture of your progress and helps you maintain motivation during difficult periods. The eighth principle is the role of meaning and purpose in sustaining long-term change. Changes that are connected to your deeper values and sense of purpose are much more likely to persist than changes driven by external pressure or superficial desires. This requires regularly reconnecting with why you're pursuing this transformation. How does developing a quiet mind serve not just you but the people you care about? How does practicing positive psychology contribute to the kind of person you want to be and the kind of life you want to live? When change is rooted in purpose rather than just personal preference, you have access to deeper sources of motivation that sustain you through the inevitable challenges of transformation. Purpose provides the why that makes the difficult how feel worthwhile. The practical application of these principles involves creating what I call a transformation ecosystem. A comprehensive approach that addresses neuroscience, environment, identity, social support, integration, tracking, and purpose simultaneously. When all these elements work together, lasting change becomes not just possible but inevitable. Chapter 15. Living the Quiet Mind Revolution and Your Blueprint for Extraordinary Life Transformation. You now possess something that most people will never have. A comprehensive understanding of how to develop genuine mental mastery and apply positive psychology principles for lasting life transformation. But knowledge without application is worthless, and even the most sophisticated techniques won't change your life unless you implement them consistently and systematically. The question isn't whether these principles work. The neuroscience is clear. The research is overwhelming, and millions of people have transformed their lives using these approaches. The only question is whether you'll join the small percentage of people who actually apply what they've learned rather than just collecting information. The Quiet Mind Revolution isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming who you really are underneath all the mental noise, conditioning, and reactive patterns. It's about accessing the calm, clear, wise, and compassionate aspects of yourself that have always existed but have been buried under layers of stress, distraction, and unconscious programming. This transformation begins with a fundamental decision. Will you continue living at the mercy of your thoughts, emotions, and circumstances? Or will you take responsibility for your inner state regardless of what's happening around you? Will you remain a victim of your conditioning? Or will you become the conscious architect of your mental and emotional experience? The path forward requires what I call revolutionary commitment. Not the kind of commitment that depends on feeling motivated or having perfect conditions, but the kind of commitment that persists through resistance, setbacks, and the inevitable challenges that come with genuine growth. This is commitment to your highest potential, commitment to becoming the person you know you're capable of being. Your transformation blueprint begins with establishing non-negotiable daily practices. These aren't suggestions or things you'll do when you have time. They're core practices that you maintain regardless of circumstances because you understand they're essential for accessing your full potential. Your morning foundation practice should take 10 to 15 minutes and include 3 elements. Connecting with your breath to center yourself, setting a clear intention for the day, and practicing gratitude for something meaningful in your life. This isn't about perfection. It's about consistently starting your day from a place of choice rather than reaction. Your daily anchor moments involve brief pauses throughout the day to reconnect with mental clarity and presence. Before important conversations, take 3 conscious breaths. Before making decisions, access your inner wisdom. Before reacting to stress, pause and choose your response. These micro practices accumulate to create dramatic shifts in your overall mental state. Your evening integration practice involves reviewing your day with compassion and curiosity. What went well? What did you learn? Where did you respond from your higher self? And where did you react from old patterns? How can you apply today's lessons to tomorrow's challenges? This reflection solidifies your growth and prepares your subconscious mind for continued development while you sleep. Beyond daily practices, you need what I call weekly recalibration. Spend time each week in deeper reflection and planning. Review your progress, adjust your approach, and reconnect with your deeper purpose. This might involve longer meditation sessions, time in nature, creative pursuits, or meaningful conversations that support your growth. Your monthly evolution involves stepping back to see the bigger picture of your transformation. What patterns are you noticing? Where are you growing? What areas need more attention? How are your changes affecting your relationships, your work, and your overall life satisfaction? This macro perspective helps you maintain momentum and make necessary course corrections. The social dimension of your transformation is crucial. You need to either find or create a community of people who support your growth. This might be family members who understand your journey, friends who share similar values, online communities focused on consciousness development, or formal groups like meditation circles or personal development meetups. Remember that not everyone in your life will understand or support your transformation. Some people might feel threatened by your changes or pressure you to return to old patterns. This is normal and doesn't mean you should abandon your growth. It means you need to maintain clear boundaries while staying compassionate toward those who aren't ready for their own development. Your environmental design should support rather than sabotage your transformation. This includes your physical environment, which should be organized and peaceful rather than chaotic and stressful. It includes your information environment, being selective about what you consume rather than randomly exposing yourself to anxiety-inducing or distracting content. And it includes your social environment, spending more time with people who elevate your consciousness and less time with those who drain your energy. The integration phase involves applying your developing skills to real-world challenges and opportunities. This is where transformation moves beyond personal practice into authentic contribution. How can you use your growing emotional intelligence to improve your relationships? How can you apply your mental clarity skills to your work? How can you leverage your positive psychology practices to support others? The ultimate goal isn't to become perfect or to eliminate all challenges from your life. It's to develop the inner resources that allow you to navigate whatever life presents with wisdom, grace, and resilience. It's to become someone who remains centered in chaos, kind in conflict, and clear in confusion. This transformation creates what I call beneficial ripple effects. Your family benefits from your emotional stability and presence. Your work benefits from your mental clarity and focused attention. Your community benefits from your positive energy and conscious contributions. Your example gives others permission to pursue their own growth and development. The research shows that people who successfully develop these capacities report dramatic improvements in life satisfaction, relationship quality, career success, health outcomes, and overall well-being. But beyond these measurable benefits, they experience something much more profound. A sense of authenticity, purpose, and inner freedom that no external circumstances can threaten. Your transformation isn't just about improving your own life, though that's certainly important. It's about contributing to the evolution of human consciousness and the creation of a more peaceful, wise, and compassionate world. Every person who develops genuine mental mastery and emotional intelligence makes it easier for others to do the same. The time for transformation is now, not when you have more time, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel completely ready. The moment you decide to take your inner development seriously and commit to consistent practice is the moment your life begins to change. Every day you delay is another day of living below your potential and missing opportunities for growth and contribution. You have everything you need to begin this transformation immediately. You understand the principles. You know the practices, and you have access to the most sophisticated technology ever discovered for changing human consciousness, your own mind. The only question remaining is whether you'll use this knowledge or allow it to remain theoretical information that never transforms into practical wisdom. The quiet mind revolution starts with you in this moment, with the next choice you make about how to direct your attention and respond to your circumstances. Will you choose consciousness over unconsciousness, presence over distraction, wisdom over reactivity? Will you join the small percentage of people who actually transform their lives? Or will you remain part of the majority who simply hope things will somehow improve on their own? The choice is yours, and the time is now. Your extraordinary life is waiting on the other side of your commitment to becoming who you really